This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Brigman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Brigman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up? Salvador Brigman here with the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. I have a really exciting announcement that my new audiobook is now available on Audible. So if you want to check it out, it's all about nonprofit crowdfunding. I talk about traditional crowdfunding campaigns, I talk about peer-to-peer fundraising, and specifically, if you are a nonprofit who is trying to raise money, or if you're trying to start an entirely new nonprofit organization, I think you're going to get a ton out of this audiobook. And what's better is you can actually listen to this thing when you're in the car. You can listen to this thing when you're cleaning the house or you're at the gym. You don't have to have all of your attention on the physical book. You can be listening and doing other things. If you want to check it out on Audible, it is at crowdcrux.com/nonprofit audio. That is crowdcrux.com/nonprofit audio. And it will be taken to that link right there on Audible, so you can check it out. I believe there's also a 30-day free trial if you are interested in consuming one audiobook per month. It's actually really easy to get through one if you just listen on the car every single day. You can get a free trial and also gain access to the book for free that way, which is pretty cool. Or you can just purchase it outright. The other thing I want to mention here before we get into today's episode is that this episode is going to be based around fan-related questions. So a bunch of fans have sent in questions, and I'm basically going through them and answering them on this podcast. We'll go into a few different categories. We'll be talking about different strategies for raising money, etc., and directly answering their questions. I always invite you to send in questions if you do have them. I honestly can't always get to all of them, but I do try to either provide helpful resources like kickstarterforum.org where you can have your questions answered, or I will try to bring them on the podcast like I am now and answer some of them that way so you can also benefit from my answers. The other thing I want to mention just really quickly before we get into this podcast is I've had a lot of great people who have reached out and said that my book last year in 2016 on crowdfunding personal expenses was very helpful, that it went through a lot of different strategies that they used to successfully raise money. And this is for a lot of different types of campaigns, honestly, but mainly on GoFundMe. Mainly people that are raising money for charitable expenses. It could be related to education, could be related to a trip or a honeymoon or some type of fundraising event. You can use GoFundMe and other sites out there for this. And if you are interested in this new thing that I'm going to be announcing, I invite you to join a waitlist that I'm about to mention. So after putting together this book, I started to think to myself, how can I go a little bit deeper into the ways that I'm helping people raise money under this umbrella of crowdfunding? And I think one of the ways that I could do it is if I put together more of a video-based program to sort of supplement the physical book. So the video program would be taking you through a variety of different ways to improve and boost the amount of money that you're raising right now on GoFundMe. So we'll be talking about different strategies, different tools out there, and how you can essentially boost the funding meter to your campaign and get more people interested in this whole crowdfunding campaign that you are raising. I don't know if I'm going to actually put together this program. Honestly, I'd have to put a lot of things to the side to be able to do this. So if you are interested, I'm going to be gauging how many people in my audience are interested in this program. And if enough people sign up, then I'm going to put it together, put everything on hold, and I'll be focusing exclusively on this. So if you want to join the waitlist, it's at crowdcrux.com/GoFundMe waitlist. That is crowdcrux.com/GoFundMe waitlist. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode and answer some of the questions that have been submitted on this show.
Hi, Sal. My name is Jenny. First off, I got to say that I'm a big fan of your podcast, which I stumbled upon randomly a few weeks ago in iTunes. I listen to several episodes a week, and I love all the info you and your guests share. I'm calling because I wanted to ask for your advice for my upcoming crowdfunding campaign. I'm about to launch my business as a life coach and counselor, and I need startup money for things like office space, furniture, business cards, basic overhead startup stuff. I know that many crowdfunding campaigns offer some kind of return on investment for the donors, like early access to or discounts on a product or some kind of goods. My business doesn't have these traditional types of offerings. I'd like people to support me straight out of the kindness of their hearts, knowing that their donation helps me provide coaching and counseling services to people in need. So I actually have a couple questions. The first is, should I incentivize donations and how? And also, what have other successful service-based, business campaigns done to raise money? Thanks so much for your help.
Jenny, thank you for leaving that question. Also, congratulations on starting this entire new business. It's going to be a roller coaster ride, I'm sure. And I think it says something about you that you're just willing to go out there on your own and stake your claim. So congratulations. To answer your question here, so I'm going to go through a few different things. First of all, if you are looking to raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you should know that the majority of campaigns will put their campaign or their product or their pitch into a box. And what I mean by that is they're offering certain perks or certain rewards, things that backers, after they give money, gain access to. And the reason that that's compelling is it makes someone far more likely to buy into your vision. And it's also, I think, a really great just relationship building tool, to be honest. So from your angle, doing a service, it is naturally going to be a little bit more difficult, and you should know that going in. One of the things that you could do is to offer your consulting or your sessions with these various people who are looking to hire you at a discounted price. So as a thank you for them to back you, to support you in the early days, you're giving them sort of a discount on your services. And maybe that's a 3-month plan. Maybe that's just a 1-month plan. You have to decide that. And someone can say, okay, I know that Jenny has helped me in the past, or I've seen her work with these different types of groups. Therefore, I know this is a good career move for her. I also am going to buy probably her services in the future. Makes sense now to pledge to the campaign. And even people who are friends who don't necessarily might not want you as their counselor, they'll still probably support. And maybe it can be like a voucher and they send one of their friends to you. So that could be one thing that works. Another way that you can also think of packaging this up and offering rewards is to consider how you can go deeper in terms of solving the problems that you're trying to solve for these people. And what I mean by that is, on a very surface level, you might be, say, helping someone with an hourly type of consulting session. Okay, how can we go deeper than that? What if when someone is not there with you, they're still trying to learn and get better and learn all of these different things you've been talking about, they can access an online course, or they can read a book that you've written, or some other type of material that they can use to continue to help them even when you are not there in their life. because maybe you're only seeing them once a week. So you could offer an online course. You could also offer access to a book that you've written. You could offer access to a private podcast or private videos of some sort, or even a private Facebook community, something along these lines to help people in a deeper way. That's another thing that you could do to sort of package this and offer some rewards. Now, by doing this campaign, I want you to be very aware of the fact that you're going to have a difficult time. And I've seen a lot of different service-based campaigns. It's just naturally going to be harder for you if you're using Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You really have to go after people directly. You have to be doing a lot of different communications. You have to be doing Facebook messages, texting, etc. Maybe even have a launch party where people will pledge on the first day. You have to make sure that you have some donors lined up to pledge in the first 3 days. And it's very unlikely that you are going to receive pledges from strangers on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And I hate to say that, but that is usually the case. You might see friends of friends who see you on their friend's Facebook feed or something like that. You might get some strangers donating that way. But typically, unless you already have some kind of an audience online, it's going to be less likely for you to rope in any kind of backers on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. That being said, if you do have some time before you're making this leap forward, you could put out YouTube videos. You could put out videos on Facebook if you have a Facebook page. You could start to create blog posts if you're more of a writer, or if you're more of a speaker, you could even do a podcast. And that way people can begin to sample what it is that you're going to be offering to them. And this is a really powerful, what I call lead generation or relationship building tool. You have a lot of people then sampling these free things that you're going to be putting out. A certain amount of those people are going to like what you're doing. You can then have them follow you, or you can have them hop on to an email list to be notified of when your campaign is coming out. And that is literally the basic formula that I've used to build up my own following. Putting out free content. You've said you've listened to my podcast. People have a sample of the type of quality of content that I deliver, all of that kind of stuff. I put out a lot of free content to build the audience. So you could also do that. And it's very simple to do. It doesn't have to be professional YouTube videos or even professional things that you're posting on your blog. You can just start to do it now, because I guarantee you, if you ever want to scale the business that you're setting up beyond just consulting or training with individual people, and you want to make it larger than that, you want to begin to put out online courses on spirituality or on understanding emotional intelligence, all of these different topics and self-development. Or if you ever want to create, more of a full-fledged book here, you're going to have to build an audience anyway. So the sooner you get started with that, the better. And it will also maybe translate into backers for your crowdfunding campaign. Just make sure you get them on the email list. Now, the last thing I want to say to you, and I really mean this, is just my honest opinion. Other people out there might have different opinions than me, but if you're asking for donations to start a business, that kind of just makes me cringe. And the reason here is because you're building this business in order to make money. Like, this is a business. It's going to be profitable. It's going to build your own wealth. It's kind of disingenuous or not very genuine to me to ask for donations to do that. And people might disagree with me, but I think that what a far healthier path would be, particularly with your friends and your family, is if you offered them shares in the business, or you offered them, hey, this is going to be a loan for the business. We're going to pay it back with this amount of interest, and really compensate them as an investor in that way. Maybe even, hashing out some kind of a royalty thing, like your first 3 clients are going to pay for this money that they've lent, etc. I don't think it's actually, at least my own values, a good thing to ask for donations that just go in like this big pot that you're using to start the business. Also, it's going to be, I think, harder down the road. Like, you're celebrating your success. I have all these clients, and they're like, thanks, but like, I gave you money. It doesn't feel right to me. One of the other things you could do, though, if you want to go down that path, I have seen a lot of people who will raise money for a specific cause within the business. So like they'll raise money for a life coach program that they must go through in order to get certified so they can then become a life coach. Or they raise money for something very specific that they need for the business that will allow them to actually go forward and build the business. So like a certification program or education or traveling somewhere. I have seen people successfully raise money for a very tangible item in that way, but I haven't seen very many people successfully raise money just in very general terms to like start a business and use it for all of these different expenses. Like that doesn't jibe as well with me. But I hope that this advice was helpful for you, and thank you for leaving the question. I also, obviously, I really thank you so much for just listening to the podcast and taking action and all of those different things. I really hope that the podcast has been a pivotal thing for you that will help you launch this successful business.
Hey Sal, we're Against All Currents team. Our plan is to film an adventure documentary show while sailing the world. On this year-long trip, we'll be filming our crazy adventure, explore cultures, and uncover mysterious places. And we plan to report to our fans on a weekly basis. We also plan to co-create the show with them, so they'll be our wind and we'll be the ship. What we're not yet sure is what platform to focus on. Shall we do it on a well-known platform such as Kickstarter, GoFundMe, or Indiegogo, or is it wiser to concentrate on a niche site like Fund My Travel or some sailing stuff? I don't know. What do you think, Sal? Thanks for your answer.
Hey, Jared, thank you for leaving the question. And it's also a great question. This is a difficult one. And it's also one where I don't think there's necessarily a proven path, but I will give you some things to consider and also some pointers that I have for you in your fundraising campaign. So first of all, in terms of if you're looking to do, say, raising money for travel, the question is, should you go on an established platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or should you go with more of a niche site? So if you are delivering something to these backers, like a movie they can watch, or you're writing a blog, you can use Kickstarter for that. You can only not use Kickstarter if you were just like taking the money and you weren't doing any kind of updates. Like it was more like a Fund My Life type of campaign. You can't do that on Kickstarter, but from what I understand, you would be able to based on your description. And you could also use Indiegogo or one of the other niche sites out there. One of the big differences here is that with your campaign, it's going to be less likely that you rope in strangers on Kickstarter or Indiegogo just because of the category that you're going to be launching under. If you were doing more of like a physical product, definitely way more likely to see strangers on Kickstarter and Indiegogo back your campaign. Likely, it's probably going to be most of your own marketing effort that results in the backers for your campaign. And that marketing could be your own organic in terms of putting out, social media posts, in terms of posting on Twitter, Facebook, putting out videos, maybe your own audience, your own email list, people who have subscribed via your website or any advertisements you've done. A lot of the backers are going to come from your own efforts. So I don't think there's actually as much difference here in terms of the community on these different sites for what you're raising money for. There are some functionality differences between Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Like Indiegogo has the secret perk option. You can give people access to a secret perk they can claim with a specific link. There are other various differences here in demand, like et cetera. You can go through some of those functionality differences. The one thing I do want to say is that also if you are doing this, if you are building the marketing clout to make this campaign successful, you could actually more easily stand out as a success story on a niche website. And what do I mean by that? I mean, let's just say you raise, $25,000 on Kickstarter or on Indiegogo, that might not be as big of a deal just because lots of campaigns have raised lots of money. If you do it on a niche site, that might be for them like a grand success story. And they might then decide to promote your campaign even more or feature it as one of the very highly successful campaigns out there and an example of what they can do if you go on their platform. So you might see more marketing benefits if you are a success story on a niche site versus if you are on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. However, it's definitely not going to, from a platform standpoint, make very much of a difference in my opinion. I think a lot of people are going to be supporting your campaign because they see social media posts that you've put out, or because they've seen things that you've done online, like maybe you put out some videos or something like that. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. I think it's mainly going to come from your own marketing clout, so that the platform itself is not going to matter as much. I don't know, which niche platforms you were looking at, but you can compare some of the functionality there also, and also some of the fee differences, etc. The one thing I do like about Kickstarter is, and also Indiegogo, is just the level of brand equity that they have. Everyone knows now mostly what these sites are. So it's more of a less trust factor here. Like, people know what to expect in some ways and in some sense. So it's a little bit more familiar in that way. So that's one thing I like. The other thing I like is if you do see any other similar campaigns, like let's just say you go on Kickstarter right now and you look at some of the other campaigns that might be similar to yours, you can use these sites as research tools. And what I mean by that is you can look at the community for a particular campaign. You can see, okay, how many of these people are regular versus new backers? Where are these people coming from? And that can sort of inform your own marketing efforts in some ways. And you can also make use of a tool like KickTrack to see how the funding progress has progressed for a Kickstarter campaign over time. And while you might not decide to launch on Kickstarter, it's still a really great research tool as you're going into this campaign. I'm sorry I can't really answer your question in any deeper way here without knowing, more about the project and the different niche sites that you're looking at. I think that when you're doing this campaign launch, a huge, really big portion for most campaigners in the first 3 days comes from their email list. So making sure that you spend careful attention on who is opening those emails and who is not is going to allow you to raise more money. If you launch this thing and you announce it to, say, 1,000 people on your email list, and let's just say 70% opened that first email, you still have a good number of people, 300 people, who didn't open that announcement email. So you could send them a follow-up email just to those specific people. Or those people who opened the email, maybe let's just say you got 20% of those people to pledge, and you can work out the numbers, and you can say, okay, all of these people were interested, but they didn't pledge. How can I then send them another email to get them more interested in pledging? You sort of segment the audience in that way, and you sort of gauge the temperature or the buying temperature of the people. That's what I've seen, the best strategy to go about really making sure that you make the most of your email list and make the most of your social following if you are going into a completely new campaign launch. Thank you for leaving the question. I hope that was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing your campaign.
Hi Salvador, this is Mark Devandara. I'm calling from Florida. We have a project completed, almost done, with the engineering plan, and patent has been approved. And now we are looking for a funding for a robotic wheelchair, and that's why we want your opinion, a suggestion of how we can get it. And we are looking to start production. We have order from the federal government and some hospitals, insurance companies and things like that, but now we have to produce it.
Hey, Mark, thanks for leaving the question. A robotic wheelchair. That's kind of an interesting product. To sum up my answer, there are 3 routes that you can go down if you want financing for the company. The first is going to be with equity crowdfunding. The second is with debt crowdfunding. And the third is with rewards-based crowdfunding, also known as Kickstarter and Indiegogo-esque crowdfunding. So let's break these down. Number 1, equity crowdfunding. Okay, so you could do a raise on Start Engine, on Seed Invest, on websites like WeFunder, and I'll link those up in the show notes for this episode. And you could do a Title III raise or a Regulation A+ raise. I've talked about the differences between these on the podcast before. Title III, you can raise upwards of $1 million, and this would be via non-accredited investors. And the great thing about, I think, Title III is it's so new that it's really interesting to see a lot of these different companies that are coming up. And I have had some of them on the podcast. I had a guy who literally raised money to create a jetpack. Like, how cool is that? So you can raise upwards of $1 million with Title III. Regulation A+, I believe the cap there is $50 million, but don't think of it as a silver bullet. This is not just like you put your campaign up and it raises money. You also have to sell the vision of the company. You have to explain to investors why this is a good investment, what kind of ROI they're going to get, what your path for the company is, etc. You really have to rope investors in and promote the campaign in that way so they get excited about it. They start to see this vision that you have for the company. On the debt side, if you are looking to take on debt as a way to finance the company, you could go, aside from, the traditional sources, you could look into sites like Lending Club, you could look into Prosper, and both of these sites allow you to take on a business loan or an unsecured personal loan. And the great thing about peer-to-peer lending, these two sites, is you can actually get a better rate than if you were to use just credit cards to finance the company. So you can check your rate very easily on Lending Club or Prosper. You can see what kind of rate you would get. And by you checking your rate, you're actually not going to affect your credit score in any sort of way. So you can look into those two paths if you are looking to take on debt. And finally, if you want to conduct more of a fundraising campaign or a rewards-based crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, what you should know is you're going to have to offer something to your backers. This kind of functions as a pre-order. So if you are looking to create this wheelchair, you'd be offering that for a pre-order. People would be able to own one of these things as a result of backing your campaign, or they would own something similar to it, something like it that they can use. You have to think of what you could actually ship out to people once they decide to back your campaign. And there are pluses and minuses to every single one of these strategies. Pretty much, though, you have to think of, if you are doing a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign, where are these backers actually existing online? I don't know very much about your industry. I have no idea where these people are online, if they gather in Facebook groups, if you can do Facebook advertising, particularly targeting people who use wheelchairs, getting them maybe on an email list, so that way when you launch, you have a bunch of people you can announce the campaign to. I think you have to look into that, doing your own research. And you also have to research a bit the costs of doing an equity crowdfunding campaign if you decide to go that route, because there are going to be legal and accounting costs associated with that. But I hope that answer at least gets you started thinking about different ways you can use crowdfunding to finance this new venture and also the technology. Thank you for leaving the question. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. It is actually a lot harder to do that outro than you might think. Like, I'm always stumbling over my words. You should try it at home. Guys, thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that you got something out of this episode and that the advice that I gave to some of the listeners who submitted their questions was helpful for you and also helpful for them. If you are interested in the program that I was teasing earlier, talking about how to raise money more effectively on GoFundMe, you can join the waitlist at crowdcrux.com/GoFundMe waitlist. That is crowdcrux.com/GoFundMe waitlist. And again, I'm using this sort of as a gauge as to whether or not I'm going to spend time on this. So if enough people sign up, then I will spend more time. I'm taking everything, pretty much putting it all on hold to make this program for you. And I have all of the knowledge in my head. Honestly, it's just more of like I have a lot of things going on. Would it make sense to do this? Are there enough people interested? That's sort of how I'm thinking about this process. And also, I want to be able to interact with some of these people who are interested in the program so I can make sure that I make something that's really going to get you results. And I can test it out with some of the people who have subscribed, etc., to make sure that this is going to be a great course with amazing videos to get you results and make sure that you raise more money for whatever it is that you're trying to do a crowdfunding campaign for. A lot of the principles and a lot of the strategies, honestly, are just things that people don't even know about. It's crazy to me. I'll see someone literally burn out their network by going about asking for money or going about trying to do the fundraiser in completely the wrong way. And it's so sad to me because had they gone about it differently, they would have effectively raised money. But because whatever they did or they came off as pleading, etc., they didn't use any of the tools that I'm going to mention in the program, they don't see the level of success that they want. And it's kind of sad. I put out the book, Crowdfunding Personal Expenses. I think people found that to be not only just like going through the basics, but also introducing some of the more high-level psychology behind raising money. So I think that my course is not only going to supplement that, but it's also going to be introducing you to some of the new things that I didn't include in that book. You're kind of constrained, honestly, by writing a book to very certain things. Like you can only show the reader certain things, and it's really hard to like include diagrams and all that kind of stuff, make it more interactive and fun to consume. Unless you are an avid reader, it can actually be really hard to get through an entire book that is factual. But what I love about videos, what I love about my YouTube channel is I'm beginning to include more stuff to emotionally engage you. Things like whiteboard explainer videos, things like video overlays, and all of the things I included in my last course that people have liked. So that I can include that into this new program to make it easier to consume the information. So if you are interested, that is crowdcrux.com/GoFundMe waitlist. But thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I'll see you next time.